Watchtower study for the week of March 9th to 15th, 2026. Theme: You can successfully fight negative feelings. This week's study will focus on how to deal with our negative thoughts and feelings. Question 1 to 2. How did the Apostle Paul feel at times, and why might we relate to what he wrote about himself? Romans 7 verses 21 to 24. Answer. At times, the Apostle Paul felt discouraged because he struggled with an inner conflict. Although he sincerely wanted to do what was right and please Jehovah, he found that sinful tendencies sometimes pulled him in the opposite direction. In Romans 7 verses 21 to 24, he described this battle between his desire to do good and the wrong inclinations within him, even calling himself a miserable man. Additional comment: many of us can relate to Paul's feelings. Even though we love Jehovah and try to serve him faithfully, we also face weaknesses and imperfect desires. Like Paul, we may sometimes feel frustrated by our shortcomings or by mistakes we have made in the past. His honesty reminds us that even faithful servants of God experience such struggles. Question 3. What will we consider in this article? See also, Expression Explained. Answer. In this article, we will consider 3 main questions. What caused the Apostle Paul at times to feel miserable? How did he deal with those negative feelings? And how can we successfully fight our own negative feelings? Question 4. What caused Paul to have negative feelings? Answer. One reason Paul had negative feelings was because of things he had done in the past. Before becoming a Christian, when he was known as Saul, he approved of the stoning of Stephen, a faithful servant of God. He also took an active role in persecuting Christians, even entering homes and dragging believers off to prison. Remembering these actions likely caused Paul deep regret and contributed to the negative feelings he sometimes experienced. Question 5. How was Paul affected by his past actions? Answer. Paul was deeply affected by the memory of his past actions as a persecutor of Christians. Even after becoming a faithful servant of Jehovah, he sometimes felt unworthy because of what he had done. For instance, in 1 Corinthians 15 verse 9 he said that he was not worthy to be called an apostle because he had persecuted the congregation of God. As time passed, he continued to speak humbly about himself. In Ephesians 3 verse 8 he described himself as less than the least of all holy ones, and in 1 Timothy 1 verse 13 he acknowledged that he had formerly been a blasphemer and a persecutor and an insolent man. Additional comment: these memories likely caused Paul emotional pain, especially when he met Christians or families who had suffered because of his earlier persecution. Even so, he did not allow those feelings to stop him from serving Jehovah faithfully. Question 6. What else caused Paul much distress? Answer. Another cause of Paul's distress was what he described as a thorn in the flesh. Although he did not clearly identify what this thorn was, the expression suggests something painful or troubling that affected him continually. It may have been a physical problem, possibly related to poor eyesight, which could have made writing letters and carrying out his ministry more difficult. Others suggest that it may have involved emotional stress caused by opposers or false teachers who criticized and challenged his authority. Whatever the exact cause, this thorn was a persistent source of distress for Paul. Question 7. How was Paul affected by his imperfections? Romans 7 verses 18 and 19. Answer. Paul was deeply frustrated by his imperfections. As Romans 7 verses 18 and 19 explains, even though he sincerely wanted to do what was right, he found that his imperfect flesh sometimes prevented him from carrying out his good intentions. There was a constant struggle between his desire to obey God and the sinful tendencies within him. This inner conflict likely caused Paul discouragement whenever his weaknesses resurfaced. However, instead of giving up, he kept working hard to discipline himself and improve, as shown at 1 Corinthians 9 verse 27. His example shows determination to keep striving to please Jehovah despite imperfections. Question 8. What do Paul's letters indicate regarding how he dealt with his imperfections? Answer. Paul's letters show that he actively worked to overcome his imperfections by relying on God's Spirit and applying scriptural guidance. He explained that Christians can fight sinful tendencies by putting them to death with the help of Jehovah's Spirit. Paul often identified specific wrong traits and desires that Christians must resist, such as those listed at Galatians 5 verses 19 to 21, 26. This suggests that he carefully examined his own weaknesses, meditated on the scriptures, and took practical steps to correct them. The counsel he gave to others was advice he applied himself. By relying on God's Spirit and following scriptural principles, Paul continued striving to overcome his imperfections. Question 9 to 10. What helped Paul to fight negative emotions? Ephesians 1 verse 7. Answer. Several things helped Paul fight negative emotions and remain positive. One was the encouragement he received from fellow believers. Good reports from traveling companions and the close friendships he enjoyed with other Christians brought him joy and comfort. Additional comment. Paul also took comfort in knowing that he had Jehovah's approval and could serve him with a clean conscience. Even while imprisoned in Rome, he encouraged others to rejoice in the Lord, showing that he did not allow negative thoughts to dominate his thinking. Additional comment. Most importantly, Paul firmly believed that the ransom sacrifice applied to him personally. Because of this, he trusted completely in Jehovah's forgiveness through Jesus Christ. This assurance allowed him to continue serving Jehovah joyfully despite his past mistakes and ongoing imperfections. Question 11. Why is Paul's example encouraging to us? Answer. Paul's example is encouraging because it shows that even a faithful servant of Jehovah struggled with inner battles and negative feelings. Like Paul, we may sometimes feel frustrated by our thoughts, words, or actions and may feel like saying, "Miserable person that I am." Additional comment. Knowing that Paul experienced similar struggles reassures us that we are not alone. It reminds us that Jehovah understands the challenges his servants face and does not expect perfection. Despite his struggles, Paul was still able to maintain a clean conscience and rejoice in serving Jehovah. His example shows that we too can remain faithful and positive even while dealing with imperfections. Question 12. How does maintaining a good spiritual routine help us in our fight against negative feelings? Answer. Maintaining a good spiritual routine helps us focus on positive and uplifting things. Just as healthy habits, such as proper nutrition, exercise, and rest, improve our physical well-being, spiritual activities strengthen our emotional and spiritual health. Regularly reading God's Word, preparing for and attending meetings, participating in discussions, and sharing in the ministry help us stay close to Jehovah. These activities refresh our mind and heart, making it easier to deal with negative thoughts and feelings. As Romans 12 verses 11 and 12 encourages, staying busy in sacred service and remaining joyful in hope can help us endure difficulties and keep a positive outlook. Questions 13 to 14. How have some faithful Christians benefited from a good spiritual routine? Answer. Some faithful Christians have found that keeping a regular spiritual routine strengthens their hearts and helps them overcome negative feelings. For example, John, who faced a serious illness at age 39, initially struggled with discouragement. Yet by maintaining a regular routine, attending meetings, participating in the ministry, and holding family worship, he gradually experienced Jehovah's strength and love, which replaced his anxious thoughts. Similarly, Eliza finds joy and reassurance every time she attends meetings or studies the Bible personally, knowing that Jehovah listens and cares for her. Nolan and his wife Diane follow a consistent spiritual routine even when discouraged, trusting that Jehovah is guiding them and helping them maintain the right attitude. These examples show that a good spiritual routine can bring comfort, courage, and a sense of closeness to Jehovah, even in difficult times. Question 15. What may we need to do to overcome negative thoughts? Illustrate. Answer. Overcoming negative thoughts may require more than just following basic spiritual routines. For instance, imagine having back pain. Walking every day might help somewhat, but to truly find relief, you would likely need to investigate the cause, do research, and perhaps consult a doctor. Similarly, to deal with persistent negative thoughts, we may need to study the Bible and our publications carefully, reflect on the principles we learn, and seek guidance from a mature Christian. This combined effort can help us understand the root of our feelings and develop practical ways to overcome them. Question 16. What can help you to identify the cause of your negative thoughts? Psalm 139 verses 1 to 4, 23, 24. Answer. Prayerfully analyze your personal needs. King David recognized that Jehovah knew him intimately, so he asked God to help him identify the cause of his anxious thoughts. Similarly, we can ask Jehovah to help us pinpoint the root of our negative thoughts and guide us on how to overcome them. We can also reflect by asking ourselves questions such as, what seems to be triggering my negative thinking? Do I focus too much on the problem instead of seeking a solution? Are there patterns in my thoughts that need adjustment? This thoughtful, prayerful approach can bring clarity and peace. Question 17. What topics for personal study can help you to focus your mind on upbuilding thoughts? Answer. Adapt your personal Bible study to meet your needs. For example, you might benefit from studying aspects of Jehovah's personality, such as his mercy, forgiveness, loyal love, or the ransom that Jesus provided. The Apostle Paul found strength and encouragement by reflecting on these truths. You can do the same by using study aids such as the Research Guide for Jehovah's Witnesses, the Watchtower Publications Index, or other Bible study resources in your language. Once you identify articles or scriptures that are encouraging, make a list and place it where you can see it. Then, whenever you start to feel down, study those articles and try to apply the lessons to your own life, helping your mind stay focused on positive and upbuilding thoughts. Question 18. What kind of study projects have some Christians found helpful? Answer. Some Christians have found personal study projects very encouraging. For example, Eliza studied the Bible character Job. She says, I relate a lot to Job. He had one trial after another. Yet, when Job was at his lowest point, he never stopped looking to Jehovah, even though he did not know why his problems were happening. Diane and her husband worked on a study project using the book Draw Close to Jehovah. She explains, we appreciate that Jehovah molds us as a potter does clay. Instead of focusing on how disappointed we are in ourselves, we try to imagine Jehovah molding us and helping us become better people. This brings us closer to Him. These kinds of study projects can help focus our minds on Jehovah's care, strengthen our faith, and encourage positive, uplifting thoughts even during difficult times. Question 19. What can we realistically expect? Answer. Even with a solid spiritual routine and a personal study program tailored to our needs, we cannot expect negative thoughts and feelings to vanish completely. There may still be days when we feel discouraged or miserable. However, with Jehovah's help, we can reduce the intensity of these negative feelings when they arise. Most days, we can enjoy a clean conscience and have every reason to rejoice in our life and in our service to Jehovah, trusting that He will give us the strength we need to cope. Question 20. What are you determined to do? Answer. We can be determined not to let negative feelings about our past, our difficulties, or our imperfections control us. With Jehovah's help, we can keep such feelings in check. We can look forward to the day when positive thinking will come naturally, and we will wake up each morning free from anxious thoughts, fully joyful in serving our loving God, Jehovah. How would you answer? Question. What could have caused the Apostle Paul at times to feel miserable? Answer. Paul sometimes felt miserable because of his past actions, such as his persecution of Christians before becoming a follower of Jehovah. He also struggled with imperfections in his own personality, like impatience or a hot temper, and with ongoing problems, such as a thorn in the flesh, that caused him distress. These combined factors created inner struggles that could weigh heavily on him. Question. How did Paul maintain a clean conscience and a positive spirit despite his negative feelings? Answer. Paul maintained a clean conscience by focusing on his service to Jehovah and relying on God's forgiveness and support. He also drew joy from his friendships with fellow believers, received encouragement from good reports, and kept a positive attitude through prayer and reflection on Jehovah's love and guidance. These practices helped him stay spiritually strong and motivated despite his struggles. Question. What can we do to fight negative feelings? Answer. We can fight negative feelings by maintaining a regular spiritual routine, including personal study, attending and participating in meetings, and engaging in the ministry. We can also analyze our thoughts in prayer, identify triggers for negative emotions, and study Bible topics that strengthen our faith and focus on Jehovah's loving qualities. Seeking support and counsel from mature Christians can further help us deal with recurring negative feelings. Thank you for watching.